I agree with you that abortion is murder, and we have to do everything we can to end it, but by throwing women in jail is not going to end it.
I mean, again, I would dissent from that statement. Welcome back to another episode of Mic'd Up. I'm your host, David Gordon, and this week we have perhaps the most important episode of the season. Today we'll be dialoguing about whether women should be prosecuted for obtaining illegal abortions in the post-Roe era. The clear answer for Christians, I submit, is yes, of course, but that position has been relegated to minority status by ProLife Inc. Indeed, after the Dobbs opinion leaked, leaders of 70 pro-life groups, including Archbishop William Lori, head of the U.S. Bishops' Committee on Pro-Life Activities, in contravention of church teaching, incredibly sent a signed letter to state lawmakers telling them, quote, as national and state pro-life organizations representing tens of millions of pro-life men, women, and children across the country, let us be clear. We state unequivocally that any measure seeking to criminalize or punish women is not pro-life, and we stand firmly opposed to such efforts, end quote. Nevertheless, my position, which I believe is the reasonable one, is that life begins at conception. Deliberately destroying human life is murder. Therefore, abortion is murder, and murderers should be prosecuted for their crime, which cries to heaven for vengeance. And right now, we need moral clarity more than ever. Several states are presently grappling with how to roll out their post-Roe abortion policy, to what extent they will punish abortions, and whom they will in fact punish. So it's no time to allow for lukewarm big life to claim the mantle of our pro-life movement. But many disagree, viewing women as victims of abortion, not as perpetrators. Our guest today falls more into that camp and is here to defend her position. Kristen is Executive Director of Democrats for Life of America and oversees the Washington, D.C. office. She's long been involved in politics and has served as Chief of Staff for Congressman Jim Barcia. She's admirably devoted herself to getting pro-life and pro-family legislation passed, and she's widely published as well, including in the Washington Post, National Review, and LA Times. Thanks so much for being with us today, Kristen. I appreciate your willingness and courage to have such a polarizing discussion. So many people are opting to shy away from this, so we really do appreciate you coming on. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. I think this is a very important discussion to have, so I'm very happy to be here to discuss it.
No, absolutely. You know, because I remember even in like the 2016 primary season, everybody was knocking Donald Trump when he was asked, should women who get illegal abortions be prosecuted? And then everybody came out when he said, yeah, they should be, which is the intuitive answer. I think it's the reasonable answer if we actually believe the force of our own argument that this is in fact murder and that human life begins at conception. But then even on the right, there was the circular firing squad where you had National Review and the writers there and the editors there just absolutely lampooning him for it. But what's the flaw in the argument, Kristen? Where are we going wrong with this? If there is human life at conception, and somebody deliberately submits herself to hiring a hitman, as Pope Francis says, why should they not be prosecuted? If abortion is murder, why is somebody who hires a hitman to commit a murder, why would they not be prosecuted?
Abortion is a very complicated issue and one that we've been debating for 50 years. But when it comes to women who seek abortion, many of them don't want the abortion. Many are forced into it. Many are coerced into it. And they don't have the resources. They don't feel they have the resources to have the baby. So when it comes to our personal position that abortion is murder, and I agree with you, and it takes a human life, from a practical standpoint, when you're talking about laws and legislation, we have to get to a point where no woman seeks abortion. And so I don't think starting with putting women in jail is not going to help our overall agenda to end abortion. It's going to put fuel on the fire. And I think there are very different cases too. When you look at a woman who is a 17-year-old girl who her mom, this is an actual true story, her mom ordered the abortion pills through mail, and she gave the abortion pills to her daughter. The daughter delivered the baby. They buried the baby and burned the baby, and the mother is now being prosecuted. And I think that's the right action to take. The young woman, the 17-year-old, was a victim of her mother, and she did take the pills willingly and dispose of the evidence. But I think there are a lot of different scenarios that we have to look at as who is the victim here.
Well, sure, but see, now, I hear the horror stories, but they contradict the weight of evidence published by, obviously, Guttmacher is an evil institution, but it's pretty meticulous with the numbers that it pushes out. And it'll tell you that only 14% of women who have abortions are doing it because it's at the behest of their partner, and only 1% are doing this because they were raped, and only 0.5% are doing this because of incest. And the facts on abortion are startling. It's overwhelmingly not the cases and the horror stories that you just mentioned. I'm just going to read something off here. It's 6 in 10 women who have abortions are already mothers. Half of them have 2 or more children, according to 2019 data for Centers for Disease Control. One of the main reasons people report wanting to have an abortion is so they can be a better parent to the kids they have. 64% are older than 24. 41% have attended at least some college. More than half aren't in poverty. 45% are married or in a relationship. And the reasons most frequently cited were that having a child would interfere with a woman's education, work, or ability to care for dependents, that she couldn't afford a baby right now, she did not want to be a single mother, or was having relationship problems. You know, nearly 4 in 10 women said they had completed their childbearing, and almost a third weren't ready to have a child. I mean, those are jarring things. Those do not say, first of all, exceptions should not swallow rules. So you don't make public policy based on, you know, maybe somebody being in duress here and there and committing a crime. You don't want to let exceptions swallow rules, and these are the exceptions. Moreover, what person who commits a crime isn't under some kind of duress? Imagine if we applied this standard to bank robbers, who are all, I'm sure, in dire straits financially. A lot of them have drug habits and need to support their drug habit by gaining illicit money. Should we not prosecute people who rob banks also because there's mitigating circumstances? And finally, you know, we already have something built into the criminal system for mitigating circumstances. It's called a sentencing hearing. You know, you can sentence people more lightly depending on their circumstances, and that's what the courts traditionally do. And also, prosecutors have prosecutorial discretion where they can charge people more lightly according to their circumstances, and that's what's built into the system. Why should we exempt people from a punishment for murder, cold-blooded murder, because, you know, they're having some hardship in life?
Right. I think abortion is a very different issue when we're talking about abortion. When women go to seek abortion, they're not doing so willingly. I know you throw out these statistics with the Guttmacher Institute, but when we found with the pregnancy support centers all over the country, people going to abortion clinic and offering help to women who are abortion-minded, when they find out that there's support out there for them to have their child, they'll choose life every time. So I think that's our challenge as a pro-life movement, is to continue to build up these efforts that we have done. The abortion rate has been coming down because of the effort of the pro-life community and really reaching out to abortion-minded women and showing them that they don't have to do that, and they can, they're strong, they can stay in school, they can have their babies, they can do all these things. You know, we are fighting against this abortion movement that wants to increase the numbers, and they're telling women, they're tearing women down, and they're telling women that they can't do any of these things. I think that's our mission right now. And when we talk about throwing women in jail, and this is from just a public policy, this is not my personal opinion. I agree with you 100% that we should not abortion takes a human life. But from a practical standpoint, if we're going to advance our cause and end abortion and stop the murder, we can't throw women in jail because that will just provide more, again, fuel to the fire on the abortion side that's saying we're incarcerating women for abortion. And in some states, it is still legal. So they're not breaking the law there.
Well, isn't that
so
like
I think
saying?
we have to look at the practical solutions, and I think the solution are that we need to continue to build up the support and continue to pass these laws that we're limiting abortion to at least only the first trimester. And that's from a practical legislative standpoint. We need to continue to put the ball forward.
Sure. I think everyone agrees that we should be doing all that we can to help women who are in dire straits, who are under duress, and who are feeling impelled to commit this crime. Nevertheless, it defies credulity to believe that making something illegal actually somehow encourages a culture of crime. We don't believe this for anything else. And that's just basic criminal law punishment 101. Punishment is a deterrent. It's a strong deterrent, especially when it is doled out regularly and without hesitation. So when we make something like burglary illegal, it deters burglary. If we make drug use illegal, it deters drug use. If we make robbery illegal, it deters robbery. If we make murder illegal, first-degree murder illegal, it deters first-degree murder because people are afraid of going to jail and doing the actual time for the crime, but moreover because people see a moral value in the law, that the law has normative force, and things that are made illegal prick people's consciences when they're doing it. There's a strong pressure not to run afoul of even a human-made law if it's normative. So how do you explain the fact that one of the main arguments on your side is that this is going to somehow contribute to a culture of abortion if we in fact say this is evil and you're going to prison if you do it?
Well, I think there's two different things that we need to look at. One is the implications for women. Yeah, they will maybe deterred, but the other implication is, with 2024 coming up, we have to look at the political implications as well. And when you look at the political implications, 2024 is going to be Democrats, my own party, they're using abortion as a way to win. And if we go around saying that we're going to throw women in jail for having abortions, it gives them more of an opportunity to persuade voters to not vote pro-life and to vote for pro-life protections and to vote, so we can advance protections for women to not seek abortion. It's such a critical issue right now that we need to continue to show as a movement and a pro-life movement that we care about women. Right now, people don't know that some of the states are trying to shut down pregnancy support centers like Illinois, California, New York, and trying to take away the support from women. That's where our fight needs to be right now. And I think eventually when we get to the abortion rate, when it continues to go, women have all the options to carry their children to term. Then we can start saying, that maybe pushing more penalties for self-abortion. And we see, it is possible now under current laws. There's a case in Nevada where a woman self-aborted at 24 weeks, and she has been convicted of murder and taking the life of her child. So it is still possible under the terms, under certain circumstances, where women can be convicted. And I said the previous case where the mother has been convicted for killing her grandbaby. So there are laws out there that still will, in certain cases, convict women for killing their babies.
Sure. In certain cases where there's particularly heinous circumstances, even in like mainstream jurisdictions, sure, people can be taken to task for this, but it shouldn't be where there's only circumstances that make it more of a heinous crime, because the act of abortion itself is more heinous. It's a murder more heinous than just if you murdered a stranger, because it's a greater violation of the natural law. It's a mother murdering her own child whom she's tasked with, by God, with protecting. So even the Catechism of the Catholic Church speaks about this in the aggravating circumstances of certain things in an action. So it says, one must take into account who is wronged. Violence against parents is in itself graver than violence against a stranger. So violence against one's own offspring is really bad. I don't think we should be relegating this to the crazy cases where there's a bunch of aggravating circumstances that people who murder their own kids should even be prosecuted. But beyond that, aren't you guys playing the short game at the expense of the long game? The fact is, if the messaging is weak, and it's been pathetically weak, you know, where women are the victims of abortion and we need to treat them with kid gloves, the public perceives that messaging, and all they take from that is abortion's not that bad, and that our side doesn't even believe the force of its own rhetoric. And you could see them soft pedaling it out. I believe it was the referendum in Nebraska where this was on the ballot, and of course the pro-life side got its butt kicked, and people voted overwhelmingly in support of abortion. And the pro-life side made it all about, oh, we're just trying to outlaw extreme abortions. We don't want to, you know, hurt women. We're just trying to get rid of the extreme pro-abortion laws that you can kill babies almost after they're born. People see through that. It's transparent. It seems disingenuous. Doesn't that sink us in the long run because we lose the force of our messaging?
Yes, I agree. We have a huge problem in the pro-life movement with the getting through to the abortion, countering the abortion message. And part of that is in all those ballot initiatives, we were outspent by 10-1, and all this money pours in at the last minute with this messaging that is incorrect. The abortion movement says that we're taking away women's rights and going back into the Stone Ages. And so when we've lost those initiatives badly. So I think the pro-life movement does need to step up, and our big challenge coming up is in Ohio, where they're going to pass a constitutional amendment for abortion. And we really need to get our messaging around countering what they're saying on the abortion side. And we need a big win there for the movement. But I'm not sure saying that we're going to throw women in jail is going to be the message that will help us win, because we have to get those swing votes right in the middle, people who support limitations on abortion and support health and safety regulations on abortion, but don't necessarily want it banned completely. So again, there's a political side that we have to keep in mind. Again, I agree with you that abortion is murder, and we have to do everything we can to end it, but by throwing women in jail is not going to end it.
I mean, again, I would dissent from that statement. I think throwing people in jail is very much the way to end murder, robbery, larceny, carjacking. It seems to work in other cases. I think what I'm hearing come through most loudly, your position, if I can do it justice, is that this is not going to be politically expedient. It would kind of be ballot suicide. But the fact is, when we've soft pedaled the message, that has been ballot suicide. Every place this has gone on the ballot where the right has followed the conventional failed playbook of pandering to women and saying, we don't want to hurt you and you're just victims of the evil abortion industry, even though a lot of these people are self-medicating anyway. And, you know, the old coat hanger thing, well, there's going to be back alley abortions. That doesn't sound like a victim of an industry to me, but, you know, when we've been doing it that way, we've been getting our butts kicked. Like, how long are we going to learn? If you tell people abortion's not that bad, either by explicit messaging or by implicit messaging, by saying, we're not going to prosecute you for doing this, it doesn't seem like it's really murder. And then people are like, well, I don't want the government in my business. So yeah, let's sacrifice an election and say, well, if you do this thing, it's really evil. It's killing your own child. It's more evil than regular murder, and we're going to lock you up and perhaps throw away the key. Maybe that will put some fear of God into an American public that's lost its way. Why is that wrong?
I think the challenge we face there is the states with the highest abortion rate, the highest abortion numbers, will never pass anything to criminalize women. When you have California, New York, New Jersey, DC is incredible, the number of abortions that take place there. I think it's, and I think in the Bronx, there are more abortions than live births. So, in those states, it's just not practical to think that we're going to get something like that through. I'm thinking through the legislative process and what we can do. And, I don't see anything getting through that, the House and the Senate, and signed by Joe Biden right now either. We can look at different states right now. With Dobbs being overthrown, it's been put back into the states for the states to manage abortion policy. Maybe a state can try something and see what would happen if they started throwing women in jail. I don't think it would end well. But it is something that a state could try if they wanted to.
Sure. One thing, I think we talk a lot about the practical rollout of these laws or how we're going to get them into effect, but I actually think that also weakens our position a lot. And you see this with the ideological left. The left wants to make us all drive electric cars and go not have, gas stoves in our kitchen, and wants to make gas $10 a gallon. And, they'll say that if you read between the lines. And they're doing it not because they think it's popular, not because they think it's a winning issue. I mean, the Green New Deal is very unpopular when people understand what's actually in it. But they do it anyway because they think it's right. And they've been very successful at winning the culture wars doing that exact thing. Nothing that the left has done started off as being popular. When you're talking about contraception, abortion, when Roe versus Wade came down, the overwhelming majority of states had criminal laws for abortion on the books. It always starts unpopular, but by the force of their, bad moral courage, but moral courage nonetheless, they get things accomplished. So talking about principle always seems to be stronger than talking about practicality. So we know, and this is in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, that authority must ensure, quote, the security of society and its members. And that from Pius XII, public authority must be concerned with those criminal actions which injure the orderly society as established by law. He also goes on to talk about the purpose of vindictive punishment. And he says, as long as a man is on earth, such punishment can and should help toward his definitive rehabilitation, provided man himself does not raise barriers to its efficacy. He also says the natural complement of inflicting punishment is that it be carried out on the understanding that it is the effective privation of a good, the positive imposition of an evil, established by competent authority as a reaction to criminal action. It is a weight placed to restore balance in the disturbed juridical order. The fact is, we have a bunch of murderers walking free out there. People who have murdered their own children don't belong to be walking free in society. They are murderers. The juridical order has been upset. That we need to argue from a place of principle, from a place of the philosophy of punishment, that these people shouldn't be out there. And sure, we might lose an election or two, but who cares? In the long run, won't the messaging take hold in the heart of people the same way the culture of fornication, divorce, contraception took hold in the hearts of people from the bad side, even though those things weren't popular before they were pushed from on high?
I think, when you talk about, I don't know how, but when you talk to post-abortive women, they're punishing themselves, a lot of them. And that's why there's so many programs out there for post-abortion healing. I had a gentleman call me, and he married his wife, but before they were married, he encouraged her to get an abortion. And he said it's a stain on his soul, and he's still, 50 years later, still regretting that abortion and ending the life of his child. So there is a lot of guilt, a lot of self-punishment. When women have abortion, they're more likely to take drugs, suicide, be depressed. There is a lot of negative to the when women have abortion, or even men encourage people to have abortion. So I just think we have so much work to do to make sure the women have the support not to make that decision. And the problem we have right now is the abortion lobby. They're winning. They are winning the messaging game, because they have, they're outspending us. They're out messaging us. And we just need to do a better job. But again, throwing women in jail who are already regretting, who are already hurting, who already know that what they did was wrong, in jail is not the solution. We need to, the Catholic Church does a great job of really providing that support in the pregnancy centers and helping women. And that's where I think our mission should be, in really reaching out to make sure any abortion-minded woman needs that support. We see, like, there's organizations like Let Them Live and the Human Coalition. They're doing a lot to reach out to abortion-minded women to stop them before they make that decision. And I think that's really where our efforts should be. We are making progress in that area, and we should continue to do that.
Sure. Well, I want to quibble with you, and thanks for being such a good sport and really doing this. So this is all in good faith. I just want the truth of this to come out. I really do, because I honestly think that the pro-life side, I don't know what their reasons are. I don't want to accuse them of cynical reasoning, but at the same time, I think they're always overly optimistic, and they frame things that are L's in terms of W's. And here's what I'm saying. You say that these women are beating themselves up. And that's simply, when I've looked into it, not the case. As a matter of fact, 90 to 95% of women who have abortions after 5 years say that they're happy they had the abortion and it was the right choice for them. So we hear, and I went to Catholic school, I was taught this in like health class about post-abortion syndrome, and I'm sure it's there, and I'm sure there's nagging guilt, as there's nagging guilt for every other crime that we still prosecute people for. You know, robbers aren't happy people, drug users aren't happy people, murderers, you know, outside the womb are not happy people. So of course, everyone who is a criminal doesn't sleep well at night. You know, it's not sleeping the sleep of the just. But we don't let those people, for other crimes, for other non-select crimes, just off the hook. But the fact is, it doesn't seem like women are all that sad about it, because 90 to 95% of women would do it again.
Yeah, I think some do, right? I know in New York, in 2020, 6,000 women had 4 or more abortions. So I do think we should address that for sure. But the other side of this is, what do we do about the men, the fathers? Should they be prosecuted too in this scenario? You know, my husband and I were talking about how could you come to some sort of equal treatment for men and women when it comes to this issue. Because on the one hand, we're saying that men should pay child support, but on the other hand, they have no say in what happens with the baby, if it's killed or not. So I think we need to address a whole nother area that we need to discuss, and how women might be more likely to have the babies if they knew that there was going to be support from the father. And I think that's a whole nother problem of, you know, the resources, the support network for these women who find themselves pregnant and alone.
Sure. You know,
I think as a mother, I'm a mother of 3. So I had 5 pregnancies. I lost 2. And but my 3 children, I mean, even when I had my first child, it was terrifying. You know, this is going to be, you know, you have this little person that you bring home from the hospital and you're charged with caring for. And I had a good support network. So think about a woman who's alone, maybe doesn't have has no housing, and doesn't have the support. But then the abortion clinic comes along and says, we'll take care of it for you. It's only a clump of cells. It's not really a person, and you should get this abortion. So I just prosecuting that woman and throwing her in jail doesn't make sense to me. I think my party has a big problem with the support side. They're really pushing abortion as the only solution. In the last year, we've seen the governor of Arizona cut a program that helps pregnant homeless women. And now, just recently, the governor of Pennsylvania has decided that he wanted to cut the Real Alternatives program, which was started by Governor Casey of Pennsylvania. So I would encourage anyone in Pennsylvania to contact the governor and tell him not to cut that program. That is the wrong direction, and that the Democratic Party is going the wrong direction on this issue for sure.
Agree, and big agree also with prosecuting the fathers. But would you be surprised to learn that they used to prosecute the fathers. And I'm going to quote right out of When Abortion Was a Crime by Leslie Regan, page 131. Quote, unmarried women's lovers were punished for illegal abortions as well as for their illicit sexual behavior. Page 129, when an unwed woman died because of an abortion, her lover was automatically arrested, jailed, interrogated by police and coroner, and sometimes prosecuted as an accessory to the crime. The fact is that the abortion principle, or the abortion provider is already should be prosecuted. We have that on the books. They are the principal in the murder. The woman is an accomplice in the murder, and any husband would be an accessory to the murder, or a lover would be an accessory to the murder if he was in fact pushing her to commit this crime. So absolutely we should be prosecuting these men that push women to do this thing as accessories or conspirators. And of course we should be prosecuting abortion doctors, abortionists as well. I say it doctor loosely there because all they bring is death and they violate the Hippocratic Oath. But of course we should be prosecuting them. It's all of the above. But you see, like, it hangs together coherently because the criminal law is, it's a system, it's been well rolled out, it's been well thought through, and this can already be assimilated into the pre-existing structure of the criminal law. So yeah, prosecute them all. What about that kind of attitude?
I think that kind of attitude might have more teeth when you're not just blaming the woman and prosecuting the women only. When you talk about the responsibility of the fathers, I think a lot of times it's the father who is pushing the woman toward abortion, or saying that I'll break up with you if you don't have an abortion, or I'll kick you out of the house if you don't have the abortion. And even the parents, we saw the woman, the mother who ordered the abortion pills online and gave them to her daughter. I mean, she has been prosecuted, which is a good thing. So I think we should be going after the people who are pressuring these women into abortion instead of providing support to protect that life.
Sure, jail them, lock them up. Yep, I would agree.
This is where we can agree.
Sure, yeah, it's absolutely, you can't just urge someone to commit a murder. That doesn't work in the Western legal system. You are therefore an accessory to murder. But I feel like people are trying to take the moral high ground away from the purists on this side, and I don't like it. As I quoted in the opening read, Archbishop William Lori is trying to represent this almost as a Catholic, a Christian position. Oh, that we don't prosecute these women, and that's not pro-life. But let me read you from the Catechism of the Catholic Church. And this is section 2273. Quote, the moment a positive law deprives a category of human beings of the protection which civil legislation ought to accord them, the state is denying the equality of all before the law. When the state does not place its power at the service of the rights of each citizen, and in particular of the most vulnerable, the very foundations of a state based on law are undermined. As a consequence of the respect and protection which must be ensured for the unborn child from the moment of conception, the law must provide appropriate penal sanctions for every deliberate violation of the child's rights. End quote. It's quite clear. That is the Catholic tradition. And it's the same. Sixtus V, Pope Sixtus V in Ephronatum, an apostolic exhortation, says this: for a good reason the Sixth Synod of Constantinople has decreed that persons who give abortive medicine and those who receive and use poisons that kill fetuses are subject to punishment applied to murderers. So people are misrepresenting somehow that it's unchristian, it's not pro-life to say prosecute these women. It's very Christian, and it's in the 92 Catechism.
Yeah, when you look at, I think there's another case in Texas right now that's being fought. There was a woman who worked in a prison. I don't know if you saw this, that she started to get contractions, and her employer would not let her leave. So she eventually made it to the hospital 2 hours later, and she was 7 months pregnant and delivered a stillborn. The doctor said if she would have been there sooner, they could have saved the baby. And now the Attorney General in Texas is saying that she sued, and the Attorney General of Texas is saying that the baby has no rights, and she has no right to file suit against her employer, which would be the government, for not letting her go save her baby. So I think there's we have to have a fuller discussion on being consistent. In that case, who should be prosecuted for the death of that baby? Should the state pay? And I think yes. I think the Attorney General is taking the wrong position on this case. They caused the death of her baby. They should be guilty.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you believe that all the parts of the law, torts, contracts, employment law, should reflect that this is in fact a human life from the moment of conception?
Yes, and that's what we supported the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, which was just signed into law. Had that been to effect, she should have received the accommodations. It's just the regulations are being written right now. She should have received accommodations, or from a healthcare standpoint, she was having contractions. She should have been let go, let her go to the doctor to take care of her baby.
Absolutely. Well,
yeah.
Let me pivot briefly here and ask you this, because one of the main arguments that's advanced is this kind of historical argument that, oh, we don't do this. And historically, women have been the victims of abortion and not the perpetrators, and that was like the English law, and that was the law in the early American states. I mean, have you heard that, or do you pick a side on that issue?
Well, I think the abortion industry they're really terrible, and they lie to women. We know they lie to women. And so when a woman comes in for a pregnancy test, when you look at Planned Parenthood, they don't offer prenatal care. They only offer abortion. So a woman goes into a Planned Parenthood clinic, she's going to have an abortion, and they're going to do everything they can to make her have that abortion. So maybe they should be held accountable for, coercing women into something they don't want to do. They keep changing their, first it's just a clump of cells, and now they're saying that it's not a heartbeat, it's cardiac activity. So I think we should do more to go after Planned Parenthood. I think, again, the state of Texas is doing a lot on this issue. They're going after Planned Parenthood for Medicaid fraud. So I hope that puts some damage into the agenda of the abortion industry for lying to women about what's really happening with the development of their babies. Okay, so
let me ask this. The church, it's in the 1917 Code of Canon Law, it's in the 1983 Code of Canon Law. It particularly says that women who procure abortions are excommunicated, latae sententiae, automatically by virtue of their action. Is the church being unmerciful when it excommunicates and attaches this kind of vindictive justice to the act of abortion?
The church is forgiving. God is forgiving. We forgiving God, and we don't leave the lost sheep out there. We bring the lost sheep back. So I think excommunicating people, or but for a woman who has abortion, I disagree with your assumption that women aren't suffering following abortion, because the number of women who I have spoken to, and men, do suffer. So I think it's our job as Catholics is to heal them and bring them back, and speak the truth. Speak the truth about life in the womb and how valued it is, and how that it's not cardiac activity, it's a heartbeat, and it's worthy of protection, it's worthy of God's love.
Sure, well, but just suffering and feeling internal, a sense of guilt, I guess that's step one to having a conversion, but you can't forgive where there's no conversion. You can't lift an excommunication where there's been no compunctio cordis, suffering of heart and internal conversion, turning away from the sin and turning back towards the good. And somebody needs to seek forgiveness in order for that to happen. I think that's more what the church is saying, through excommunication. This can be lifted once you're ready to be forgiven and you're ready to say sorry. But saying sorry and coming back, like the prodigal son, is always the first step in obtaining the forgiveness of the all-merciful Father.
And I think when you look at Catholic politicians, I think they should be held to a higher standard when they're voting against their faith and voting against the protection for preborn life. They should be held to a higher standard, and I think we should challenge them more, especially the Catholic legislators who are advancing an abortion agenda. I mean, I think to vote for paying for using taxpayer funding for abortion or allowing abortion up to 9 months, like the Women's Health Protection Act that almost every single Democrat signed on to. I think we should put more pressure on Catholic legislators to turn away and ask for forgiveness for voting to end the lives of preborn babies.
100%, again, full agreement. So do you agree with then if bishops withhold communion, the Holy Eucharist, from pro-death, pro-abortion Catholic politicians, quote unquote Catholic politicians who present themselves in the communion line? Should bishops and priests be withholding communion from them?
I think they should look at overall all Catholic politicians, and are they all upholding every doctrine, Catholic social teaching and doctrine of what we stand for as Catholics. So there should be more pressure on all Catholic politicians to stand up for their faith. And I think the abortion is, one of the most, it's out there. And I think when you're talking about innocent human life being taken, we should put more pressure on these politicians to stand up for.
Sure. No, again, full accord on that. Well, I guess one thing that makes me bristle is that, I believed a lot of these things that I was told kind of by ProLife Inc. and that made their way into the popular culture. And then as I've tracked down a lot of the data that underlies many of these arguments, many of these points that are just kind of blindly accepted, it's turned out to not be true. So I was always told that, historically, we don't prosecute women who have abortions. They were viewed as victims. But then looking into it, in Britain, we have Lord Ellenborough's Act, 1803, that if any person or persons from and after the day from July in the year of our Lord 1803 shall either in England or Ireland willfully, maliciously, and unlawfully administer to or cause to be administered to or taken by any of His Majesty's subjects any deadly poison or other noxious and destructive substance or thing with intent thereby to murder or thereby to cause and procure the miscarriage of the woman, he's guilty of a felony. And this law was applied to the mothers who sought abortions. And later, it was ratified by the Offenses Against the Person Act in 1861, which says that every woman being with child who with intent to procure her own miscarriage shall unlawfully administer to herself any poison or other noxious thing, or shall unlawfully use any instrument or other means whatsoever with the like intent, yada, 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 shall be guilty of a felony. So, and that's the English law, which of course, we have the English common law. This is getting into a codification of the common law and English statutory law. But of course, that's the font of American law. And American states, we're told, didn't do this. They weren't prosecuting women. That's not true either. 1845, New York legislation made the woman herself liable to punishment for seeking and submitting to an abortion or for performing one upon herself. 1881, Indiana amended its abortion law to make a consenting woman punishable for abortion by jail time. 1872, California made it a crime for a woman to voluntarily submit to an abortion or to try and perform an abortion herself. New Hampshire, 1849, same. Wisconsin, 1858, same. I feel like I've been lied to. Certainly there are states that exempted women, like New Jersey, but that was not all of the states. And this was baked into the common law, the English statutory law. You have cases where people were prosecuted at common law, before the statutory law, for murdering their own kids. Why are we being lied to about this?
So did any of those statutes also include going after the doctors?
Yeah, they all include going after the doctors.
Yeah, so I think that's where we're failing right now. We have these doctors who are doing, damage to women in late term, there was a case in Maryland where Dr. Carnhart did a late-term abortion on a preschool, a kindergarten teacher, I believe it was. She came down from New York for a late-term abortion, and he flew out of town the next day and left her. She hemorrhaged and died, and he was never prosecuted for that. So I think we need to do more to go after these late-term abortion doctors in Colorado and Maryland, and where they're doing these late-term abortions that are damaging women. I think that would be a good start to really prosecute. And the doctor in D.C. right now who does late-term abortions and is harming women. We don't get the data we need on the harm against women in abortion, because the only one keeping the records are the abortion industry itself. California and Maryland, they don't provide the abortion numbers to the CDC. So we're trusting the abortion industry to give us accurate data on abortion and negative effects of abortion. So I think that's another area where we should be focused as a pro-life movement, is really getting more data on the harms to women with these late-term abortions.
Sure.
And prosecuting the doctors. I mean, Gosnell was one that was prosecuted, and it was horrific when you read the report. And part of the problem is there were laws in effect where they were supposed to go in and inspect the clinic. They hadn't inspected the clinic in like 10 years. And I think we see a lot of that around the country with these abortion clinics, where the state is afraid to go in and inspect the clinics because they don't want to violate a woman's right to abortion. So I think the inspections, we should step up those inspections and find, get more data on the harm that abortion doctors are causing to women with abortion.
Sure, and you saw it with COVID too. That was a necessary service. Like, it's hard to get groceries and whatnot, but they kept those abortion mills running.
They sure did.
Yeah.
I think in Colorado right now, we have a problem in Colorado because they have a law now that women can't have access to the abortion pill reversal. So, I mean, the lengths that my own party is going to promote abortion over birth is just terrifying.
It is. It's absolutely horrifying. We are targeting a select group of citizens for assassination. They have no legal protections, and we dare to call ourselves a civil society. Yeah, and I think, we have to fight back in these states. I can't say Ohio is critical right now with this constitutional amendment. Everybody should go to Ohio and fight to kill this amendment, because this has to be a win for the pro-life movement. If we lose here, it will not be good. So I think we have a real opportunity to defeat this constitutional amendment, and by getting the truth out there, we cannot have what's going on in Michigan extend to Ohio. Sure, and I want to wrap up. I'm going to let you give your framework, your vision for going forward in America, but you bring up one other point that I want to ask you about, and it's going after these abortion doctors. And a lot of people think that the reason that in some jurisdictions women were not treated as accomplices, jurisdictions that were kind of unfurling the common law and figuring out what the common law meant there, applying the common law. Why was it that women were not treated as accomplices to the common law crime of, post-quickening abortion, pre-quickening abortion, and whatnot? And there's really good reason for it, but people use this as almost an argument, from a moral high ground, from the force of moral authority, that, we just don't prosecute women who seek abortions. We just prosecute the doctors. But it was actually a public policy exception. So I'm going to read something from the courts. Maybe you can respond to this. So here's Bazoff versus State from the Court of Appeals of Maryland, and it's explaining why women weren't traditionally treated as accomplices. Quote, while it may seem illogical to hold that a pregnant woman who solicits the commission of an abortion and willingly submits to its commission upon her own person is not an accomplice in the commission of the crime, yet many courts in the United States have adopted this rule, asserting that public policy demands its application, and that its exception from the general rule is justified by the wisdom of experience. And we have another court, that said something similar. You know, it's accomplice liability does not attach for public policy reasons because they want to be able to go after the principal in the act of abortion, which is the doctor. They see public policy as demanding that it's more expedient and efficacious, especially back in the day when you kind of needed somebody to give you medicine or to perform the surgical act on you, that we should really target those people. And if you're an accomplice to a crime, if you're charged as an accomplice to a crime, you can't testify against the principal, against your accomplice, unless you have corroborating evidence. So it would make it really hard to go after the abortion doctors if we treated women as accomplices. That was the reason for the public policy exception, why a lot of jurisdictions didn't treat women as accomplices. It wasn't because they viewed them as victims. As you can see, the courts are like, this is illogical. You know, it doesn't even make sense within the framework, except we're doing this as a public policy exception. But they were targeting abortion doctors. You know, that was traditionally how American law did things. When abortion was legal all across the nation, they were going after the abortion mills. So isn't that's what everybody wants, right? But that's already been on the books.
Yes, but I don't think we've done enough to prosecute abortion doctors. So like Carnhart got away with killing, he's killed many women, probably more than we don't even know about. And then we have the abortion doctor in DC. You know, I think one of my friend was the one, Teresa Bukovac, who found the boxes of human remains, including a viable infant in the remains outside the abortion clinic in DC. So I think there needs to be, and those bodies, those human bodies are still sitting there in evidence. So I do think if we start making an effort to go after the abortion doctors, if we have more go after to prevent women from seeking abortion in the first place, I think that's the way that we can continue to decrease the abortion rate, by letting women know that there is support out there. Another thing, as part of the ACA, we Democrats for Life pushed forth the Pregnant Women Support Act, which provides grants to states to come up with innovative ways for women to choose life. And that's been defunded. The Biden administration did not fund it for the last several years. And Senator Casey was our big ally, and he has failed to ask for money for that program. So again, I think there's a lot more we can do, and we have to fight back. And this is where we can win as a pro-life movement, is getting to the women before they seek the abortion, making sure they know that the resources are there for them to choose life, making sure that women know that you can get your degree and have a baby. You can have a job and have a baby. There's a lot we can do. Women are stronger than the pro-abortion movement is telling them they are. The pro-abortion movement is telling them that they can't do anything unless they have the abortion. We need to reverse that. We need to continue to reach out to women and say that we're capable of a lot.
Sure. No, great words. I want to let you have the final word. Anything, first of all, I failed to ask. Please feel free to throw in right here. But give me, what's your vision for a pro-life America going forward? What does it look like? How do we get there, most particularly? In a practical sense, how do we accomplish this when the country has succumbed to the poison of a culture of death so readily, and it seems so overrun by an abortion mentality, where you see that in exit polls after the Biden-Trump election? You know, people were coming out saying just an overwhelming number that they wanted Roe versus Wade to not be overturned. What do we do, and what does a future America look like?
Yeah, you know, I would love a whole life America where no woman feels like abortion is their only option. And the Democrats who are pro-life have to stop backing down. There are Democrats in Congress right now who said they were pro-life, said they believe that life begins in the womb, and they don't vote that way. One of my biggest disappointments was Congressman Brendan Boyle from Pennsylvania. He was actually a member of Democrats for Life, and we worked with him to support pro-life legislation. And as soon as he came to Congress, he switched his position. So I think we should put pressure on the pro-life, the Democrats in particular, who say they believe, though they're personally pro-life, but they're not going to vote that way. We can no longer accept that. We cannot let them get away with that. I think Joe Biden was once pro-life, or said he was, and I think he even still says that he believes in protecting human life, but he doesn't advocate that way. He's been probably the worst president as far as human protections for preborn life. He's trying to put abortion in everything, the military, in the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, the regulations right now. He's trying to have abortion included in the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. So I think what I would encourage for any Democrat who believes in reasonable regulation, who is against late-term abortions, who thinks that women should not be forced into abortion, needs to stop being quiet about it and stand up to the bullies in the abortion lobby. Because we saw this, RFK Jr. just the other day came out and said that he would support a ban after 15 weeks. And then about 20 seconds later, his campaign staff came up and reversed that position. Stand up for what you believe. If you believe human life is worth protecting, don't run away from it. Stand up for it.
Absolutely. No, great words. Thanks so much for your time, and I appreciate it. I know it's such a contentious topic. I wasn't ever intending to rake our kind guest over the coals. It's just, there's so much stuff that needs to get out there, and I feel like people could make better decisions on this and come to the truth more readily if there weren't so many myths that were floating around. So I really wanted to get some of those out there, but in no way was I trying to harp on this or kind of seem overly exaggeratedly excited about the issue. It's just so important that we get clear answers and the right answers about this issue moving forward. Thank you so much for being on with us. Guys, this is Dave Gordon. I'm signing off here from Mic'd Up. I'll see you next week.